do that properly. Great. Over to you now, Lisa. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Jane. Okay, well, my name is Lisa Bolger Hynes, and I'm presenting my research, which is titled The Value of Fostering Relationship in Stressful Times. It was basically a mixed method exploration of the perceived experience of work-related stress and compassion and their relationship in a public sector workplace. So I'm going to dive straight in, if it will let me. Yeah, okay. So just to give, a background as to why I chose this topic. From my accent, you might recognise that I'm from Ireland, so it was an Irish public sector workplace. And the reason why I chose it is because I was worked as a health and safety officer for over 23 years. And the area of work-related stress was the most challenging area that I came across, both professionally and personally, to be honest. And a study was done by the Health and Safety Authority in Ireland back in 2018, which found that stress, anxiety and depression was the second highest cause of work-related illness in Ireland, with the longest absence from work. And public administration was found to be at most risk. And it's well known across different studies over the years that stress negatively impacts well-being, both physically and mentally. Health and safety can come at things from a very negative point of view, based on reducing harm and managing risk. And when I started studying mindfulness, I wanted to look at it from a different approach, to look at compassion, which is the innate human recognition and response to suffering, to use that as a way of looking at work-related stress. And the studies are amazing that are there related to compassion, like that it's been found that it does reduce work-related stress, that it's also good for well-being, but also beyond that, it benefits work performance. And leaders, as we know, well as lots of studies would find, that they have the most influence in workplaces. And if there's compassionate leaderships, the benefits for workplaces are huge. And then, relationships in general, if there's compassion there's much greater collaboration between people, a felt sense of connection, and, so there's lots of benefits. So my literature review I would have looked at both areas, because they're both huge areas in their own right. And then I would have also looked at how they relate to each other, because they relate right back in our evolution. That's what I found in the literature review. And our biology, in our soothing system and our stress systems, they're completely related as human beings. And then in the workplace, I just want to keep up with my notes, not that I'm just so I keep on track. In the workplace, then the benefits, like I've already alluded to some of them already, and the importance of leadership. And the other side of it is, I didn't just look at, it was really important to look at a balanced view. So it's not all about, it was about looking at all sides. So in relation to leadership in particular, it was found that sometimes people that are attracted to leadership could have personality traits that, aren't compassionate. So it was important to take account of that as well. In the measurement side of things, because I was doing a mixed method study, there was an awful lot of qualitative research, but there was quantitative. I had to look at both to try and harness as much as I could. And the influences, as I said, it was really important to look at a 360-degree, not just all the good things, because even compassion could be used in a bad way as well, it was found, for power and influence. And then, of course, in the public sector, hierarchy is a huge thing, and that can create distance between people as well. So all of these, the capability and capacity had to be looked at fully. But one of the main papers that I would have harnessed that was really important, because it was based on a public sector in Israel that was done in 2018, demonstrated how compassion from supervisors motivated people's work, also reduced stress and burnout, but as well as that, increased helpfulness, to colleagues as well as to the public. So, this whole concept of compassion flow, which is also highly researched, and, a lot of you, if you've studied compassion, would know Paul Gilbert's work. And, this whole concept is really, I would have pulled on this a lot. Now, I didn't explicitly look at self-compassion, but saying that, I found an awful lot of information came out relating to self-compassion, regardless of whether I focused on it, because it would have been too big of a study. But the thing with the compassion flow thing, again, looking at the 360 degree and looking at the negative and the positive sides, of course, compassion, it can flow around people with, emotional contagion and mirror neurons and all of that. But, the dark side can happen too if there's bad or if there's negative influences or emotional issues going on in workplaces, that can flow around too. So, it was important to take account of that as well. So, so the aims, like it said, it's all in my title, but I wanted to explore the experience of work-related stress and compassion, and looking at the relationship between them. And I was looking for obviously answers for this workplace, but also, it could be applied to any workplace. But there were specifically nuances relating to public sector as well, which would be specific for the public sector. The research informs organizations, psychology in general, the compassionate area in particular, the area of health and safety, human resources, leadership. And what I really wanted to get out of this were practical steps that workplaces could take to actually try and create compassionate workplaces. So I took a pragmatist approach to my research. Maruf, this is a quote from them. There is one reality. I took the approach, but individuals have multiple interpretations of this reality. But I wanted to uncover it with people through questionnaires, and then talking to people in a focus group that were representative across the most stressed areas, and also getting the point of view of the managers. So there was 2 managers interviewed as well. I looked at these characteristics or these demographics, and I'm not going to have time to go into them, but the really zoning in on the characteristics of public-facing roles, cross-functional roles, and emotionally taxing roles, because in the research that was done by the Health and Safety Authority, they found that these were the most stressful roles. So I really zoned in on these. So the elements that I looked at, I just want to keep an eye on time, I'm okay. So compassion, looking at compassion and the different parts, there's so many different, I looked at all the different variations of the definitions that are out there, but looking at Paul Gilbert's one, a sensitivity to suffering in oneself and others with a commitment to try to alleviate and prevent it. And the elements that I would have looked at in all parts, the questionnaire and the questions with people, I basically looked at recognizing just the visual, I think, can help people better. So like recognizing, that people are suffering with work-related stress. But I thought one important thing that wasn't explicitly in the workplace ones, it was in workplace definitions and not in the general one, was assessing, which I pulled in, which I thought was important, because people do make an assessment whether someone deserves compassion or whether the individual that's giving compassion has the resources at the time, depending on, on what's happening for them. So these can all sort of be blocks before compassionate action is taken. So assessment, common humanity, that it's, this is part of being human, having empathy, tolerating difficult feelings, which actually 50% of people found that hard. Through the questionnaire, 50% of people found it difficult to be with other people suffering. So there's another block before responding. So with the work-related stress then, it was just a simplistic definition related to stress caused or made worse by work. And the elements, I'm just going to throw them all up here, were basically taken from a cross between the Health and Safety Executive in England and the Health and Safety Authority in Ireland, that were all research-based. But as you can see, what's interesting here is that the three elements are related to relationships. So relationship is essential, peer support, manager support, they're all people. And if you look at all of them, indeed, the role is related to the relationship you have with yourself and your job. And change, demands, and control are all implemented by way of relationship and communication and consultation. So the parts of that, work-related stress speak to compassion hugely. And the other element that I thought was important was related to hindrance stressors, because that wasn't explicitly looked at, and that's related to the area of control. And it's quite particular to public sector because it's so legalistic and bureaucratic. And when people feel like they don't have any control, it can be very frustrating and they can't do anything about it. And it's really, to the likes of red tape and bureaucracy and role ambiguity, that sort of thing. So I brought in questions around that as well, and to try and measure that. So what did I find? Well, the questionnaire, with really good return. It was 89 people that responded out of 245. The questionnaire itself was found to be very reliable and consistent. And there was a really good representative male and female. So a little bit more female than male answered. And the focus group, as I said, that was the richness really came from there, and really they really spoke to each other. It was amazing actually how supportive they were for each other, and the qualitative data brought the quantitative data to life, I would say. So yeah, I can't see the top of my thing, so I'm like, what am I talking about now? Work-related stress. So what came out of it? Basically, it was found to be a serious issue, which aligns with all the research that's there in Ireland, the EU, UK, worldwide. Over half the respondents, not only did half the respondents report that their work was stressful, over half of them reported negative health effects due to their work. And not surprisingly, emotionally taxing roles reported more health effects compared to other characteristics. And these are just some of the things people said, which I think, brings again these statistics to life. Like, people spoke about burnout. They mentioned being emotionally drained, being physically exhausted, getting headaches. And one other person said that they had, their high blood pressure would be affected. Obviously, they don't blame the job totally, but they said it certainly impacted that condition for them. So that just gives you, to see how people act. Okay, so where was the problems? The problems that were found, this, just to make sense of this, what the HSA would say, that if any figure below 4, you have to take action, there's problem. And the lower the mean, the more the problem is. So you can see from this, demands was a major issue, followed by relationships. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep moving. I know, good to see. So yeah, demands was found to be the most serious source of stress across all demographics. And what came out was that it was due to workload increase with limited control. And again, this is supported by projections in research or papers that were across the EU, UK, and there's a decreased patterns of excess workload with less people. And the term VUCA, sorry, now I'm going to just make sure, because I'm in hyperdrive here, I'm going to make sure I explain this term properly to you. Okay. So the term VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, right? It was found, and this was by Van der Waal, this was COVID. So now it's even got worse. The whole, especially the public sector, with everything that's happening in the world, that the place of work is characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which obviously is extremely stressful for people because they don't know and they have no control over what they're doing, over their role. They're not sure, that there's no clarity. And this really came out in the, talking to people. It was really evident. And it's well known over the years that high demands and low control increases stress. So these are some of the things people said about the demands that they had. And as you can see, they can't get to everything. Just everything is thrown out the window every day. Some people from the word go when they go in the office. So control then, yeah, and there's limited control over resource provision. In fact, like in the public sector at the minute, there's embargoes, so there's actually blocks to taking people on. The hindrance stressors, which basically unnecessary things that people perceive that are necessary to their job, unreasonable for their role, or barriers to getting their work done. And as you can see from the bubble there, like, just red tape, trying to get like small things done, and they can't, there's blocks to getting simple things done even. And then like having demands of different groups of people pulling at them, and there's a sense that whoever shouts the loudest, or whoever's demanding the most gets responded to quickest. So look, I can't go into everything, but this diagram that this visual shows how work-related stress, the sources of demands, control, change, and role sort of are interrelated and affected by the elements of relationship, if you see by the two-way arrow, of relationship, support, and culture. And this is reflected across numerous studies. This depicts the core findings of the study, which suggests that relationships between people in the organization creates the culture that has a significant influence on the degree of work-related stress, which ultimately people feel. So I hope that makes sense. So that's sort of, but just moving into what that looks like, the culture and the culture, and this is where compassion comes in. Just to highlight, firstly, that middle management were found struggling the most with relationships and support, and that makes sense from the point of view that they're managing their own work, but they're also trying to manage somebody else's, and they mightn't have the support that they need. So they sort of came out very much struggling there. Some of the challenges, huge amount relating to lack of consultation and communication, in relation to system change management, in relation to roles, in relation to job commencement, transfer management. This is one of the things people said, like, there's no collaboration between departments. I was told on Friday I'm moving on Monday, so you can imagine the stress that would bring. And in relation to new people starting, nobody knows who's who, and they don't recognize people on the corridor, things like that. And the hierarchy. I mean, going back to the hierarchy, which, it sort of reinforces the evolutionary disposition of in and out groups. That can, like, I'm in the in group, I don't know what's going on with you, so I don't know, I don't feel related to you. So that can have a huge impact in workplaces that are big, like the public sector. And then this is, somebody voicing what that feels like, hierarchical and disconnected, top down, lip service paid to so-called consultation. The volume of people, it's also been found that the level of compassion decreases if the more people there are. So that as a factor. And then there was a real felt sense from the staff that they didn't feel valued, and that the public were actually valued above them. And all they wanted, they want to feel valued. Valuing them as people was really important to them. So enablers for this, it's really important to have psychological safety. To feel that they can talk about what's going on for them in a safe environment. But currently that's not the case. And being, having organizational values that are agreed upon between everybody, that everybody wanted they want organizational values of compassion and kindness, and that well-being matters. Um, and one way that was suggested by the staff was, having a KPI with well-being that was meaningful, because at the moment there isn't any, measurement that's related to other factors, but not to well-being. But of course, that's, there's certain ways you have to bring that in to make it work. But I'm not, I can't go into that, I'm afraid, at the minute. So just more on the compassionate results then. There was found to be a moderate level of compassion, which would be equivalent to some of the other studies which were done in the UK only in 2022. And with other, in alignment with other research, it was shown that it is easier to give compassion rather than to receive it. And women found it more easier to receive compassion compared to men. And again, this is all in line with other research that was done in the area. So that's sort of looking at the compassionate capability of the workplace, which is very much there, as you can see. But also, it is important to look at the individual capacity and the blocks that could be there. And it was found that people didn't recognize anger or frustration as requiring compassion, even though it's suffering. That people, when they feel those emotions. And 50% of people found it difficult to tolerate people suffering. So, and it's also been found that low self-compassion potentially is the biggest obstacle, because if people have that, then it's been shown that they mightn't benefit from support anyway. So these are all factors that influence the capacity and the capability in the workplace, So, so the relationship then between compassion and work-related stress, there was the correlations were significant between giving and receiving compassion, between compassion and the perceived occupational stress and the sources of work-related stress. So what does this mean? Basically, compassion has a buffering effect on work-related stress, but the amount of support has to match the level of stress, or it's not going to be effective. And then we have to consider all the internal blocks that people have as well. And if demands are to remain high, it's this area that needs to be focused on in the public sector, because this is something that we can do something about. I mightn't be able to change the VUCA world, but we can do something here. And so looking at leaders is really important, because how compassionate or emotionally intelligent has a huge impact on staff, on the culture. And this sort of thing, if there is to be real change, HR have to embrace it and bring it forward. Obviously, there's a place for training and coaching, because it is a skill that can be learned and needs to be practiced, it's been argued, and there's been lots of research and study done on it. So to increase compassion for yourself and others, and increase life satisfaction and decrease stress, and it's been shown that people that do enter into training and coaching get that benefit. So finally, we're a quick whistle stop tour, but this sort of this summarizes and portrays the key elements which emerged from this study. I'm not sure if that all came clear through everything I've gone through, but I came up with this 4-circle model that depicts the intrinsic organizational elements to work towards in cultivating compassion and moderating work-related stress. So they sort of work together. And at its core, it holds self-compassion as the basis from which compassionate leadership can flourish by connecting with people throughout the organization, as well as the public, with open, honest communication and consultation, embedded in a culture imbued by the shared values of well-being, kindness, and compassion, where ultimately people are valued as people. From this foundation, compassionate action can be taken relative to resources, systems, and roles. So, in a nutshell, how we do our work and how we relate to each other really does matter. So thanks very much. I hope I haven't run over too much time.